to StabilityWOD. Back to follow up after yesterday, where I covered the idea of how to maintain a neutral foot and ankle position while two-leg squatting or doing anything where you're on two legs. Now, it's a very important place to start when you're learning about your foot position and how to maintain stability in your foot when you're doing normal daily tasks up to when you're doing very heavy weightlifting. For a lot of us who are runners or do other activities where we're on one leg, and that could be cross-country skiing, like when you're skate skiing, it could be playing tennis, it could be playing soccer. During these tasks where you're running, a lot of the time you're only on one leg at a time. As I said yesterday, you're jumping from one leg to the other. So you're either in the air or you're on one leg. So we have to take the training stimulus from two-leg training to one-leg training. And I'm going to talk about that a lot more in the future. But we're going to start today with the foot and how to integrate that idea of a neutral foot position into our single leg training. So yesterday we talked about the concept of squatting on two legs and finding our neutral foot position, stabilizing there, and how that influences our squat at the bottom. My arch is maintained in a nice neutral position. My big toe, base of my big toe is still on the ground. This helps keep my knees in a better position. It makes my hips work better, and it overall just sets me up from the foundation to squat in a more healthy, stable position. When we take one leg away, suddenly we don't have the other leg to support us. So there's initially a balance challenge. A lot of athletes, when I get them on one leg, the first thing they do to get stability is their foot collapses in and it caves. And suddenly they're like, okay, now I can balance. But look what that does to my knee. You can see that my knee now takes this angle. My foot takes that angle. I'm all crossed up, and the torque on my foot and my knee is not so healthy. So in this situation, it takes a lot more work to bring the arch back up to its neutral position. So the base of the big toe is still on the ground. The arch has a contour, and my knee then is corrected into a place where it's parallel with my foot, if not a little bit tracking outside of my little toe. I like to encourage this sort of overcorrection at first because I want people to learn what it feels like to be in their neutral foot arch position and really reinforce that pattern. Now notice when I'm in this position, you can see my anterior tibialis muscle, which comes down, attaches into my arch. If you could see my posterior tibialis muscle coming down and around, attaching into my midfoot. These two muscles work together to keep my foot from collapsing inward and to maintain my foot in this position. There's a third muscle on the outside that is called your peroneals, and this relies on this position. These two muscles have to keep the midfoot in this position rolled up and out for these muscles to be able to do their job. So these muscles form a stirrup that goes around your foot to keep it stable. Now if we zoom out a little bit, what you'll see is as I learn how to balance in this position, my foot muscles start really working hard. I can feel this in my arch, I can feel it in my shin, I can feel it in my inner shin, and I can even feel it out in my peroneals. It starts to really burn. Once I get the hang of being stable in this position, I can add a squat to this. It could be a lunge, it could be a Bulgarian split squat, or it could just be a single leg squat. Now there's a lot of complexity to do this squat well as you work up the chain, but what you can see from the waist down is that my foot is still neutral, I still have an arch, my knee's tracking to the lateral side of my foot rather than caving that way, and it sets me up so that my hips and my glutes can stabilize my pelvis and my back, etc. So we'll come back and talk about how all this fits together, but for now, I want you to appreciate the burn that you get in your arch, the muscles on the bottom of your feet that parallel your plantar fascia, and how much activation you get in your lower leg when you're in this position versus in this position. Ton of value to just balancing in that position, especially with no shoes, and then even more challenge when you're squatting. And if we zoom out again, then you can see the whole package. And again, I'll come back and talk about what goes into keeping the pelvis level, keeping the spine vertical, and how we can use this position to not only train the foot, but also train the glutes, the hamstrings, and the rest of the body to operate in proper alignment. So my foot and lower leg are super tired after just demonstrating that for you guys. A couple things I want to reinforce. The videographer, when I asked him to try it after we filmed that segment, he said it felt like his arch, his plantar fascia was on slack. When he turned the muscles on like that, it actually took tension off of the arch of his foot, because it actually helped to shorten the length of his foot between the ball of the foot and the heel. It's exactly what engaging those muscles does. It functionally makes your foot shorter so that the tension on the passive structures in the bottom of your foot are under less strain. And this is an important component of treating plantar fasciitis and other problems with the plantar aspect, the bottom aspect of the foot. Another important takeaway from this is that the foot is at the bottom of a chain of events. So while learning foot control for a lot of people is really important, there are a lot of times when the problem is actually up in the hip. And we're going to come back after finishing our conversation about basic foot mechanics and look at the connection between these two areas, because they really are interdependent. You can't always fix one without fixing the other if there's an issue in both places. So this is where I'm excited to start to explore the complexity of stability and how our body parts work together in a more holistic way. It's not as simple as just compartmentalizing. I have a foot problem, I have a knee problem, I have a hip problem. These are part of a larger system, and in a lot of cases they all need to be addressed at the same time. But the foot in runners is a very common pattern that I see, foot weakness. So I'll always encourage people to practice this no matter where they are until they get to the point where they can really feel not only where they are in space, but they can really feel these muscles working. It's often better to do this barefoot. If you're in a gym setting where you're allowed to train barefoot, I always gain a lot of insight into what my body's doing when I'm doing functional movements in my gym with no shoes. But there's a definite awareness that you gain from being barefoot as far as what you feel from the ground, and the fact that you can actually see your foot is super valuable at first until you learn how to do it. This is just the starting point, guys. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to talk about in this regard. As always, I really appreciate you tuning in. Please take a second to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Oh, it's so tiring.